Welcome to my studio. I'm Linda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in the Okanagan Valley of Kelowna, British Columbia. And today I'd like to show you a little bit about some of the things that make my job or my life as an artist a little easier. We've got so many tools and so many products available to us now as artists that sometimes it's quite overwhelming and mind-boggling. So I'm going to show you what works for me, my favorites, and might inspire you hopefully to pick them up yourself and try a little bit of watercolor. For me, it's such a satisfying medium that it just brings me joy every day. It's like a meditation. So I'll talk about the paper, the brushes, the other bits of tools and maybe even some tips and tricks along the way to make it all come together. So without further ado, I think I'd like to get started. I've said this before on my channel. If you can, please try to bring the best you can afford to your art table. It makes a difference. I think for me, the paper is the basest. The paper is where I like to start. I like things to be consistent. So I try to work with 100% cotton when I work with paper. I do work on canvas as well, and that's a story for another day. But the paper, 100% cotton, will give you a much more beautiful absorption, and your paints will just be happier. They'll take on a life of their own. They'll do what they need to do, and sometimes unexpectedly beautiful things will happen. And it's because of that relationship between the absorbency and the quality of the paper, and then the pigment and how you apply it. So my favorite, really, I keep going back to Arches, and it's a beautiful paper. It's 100% cotton, and there's many different styles of paper. There's hot press and cold press. I've talked about that before. My favorite, because I'm a loose style painter, is the cold press and a more rough surface. And as you get to know your papers, you'll appreciate the difference a lot more. A hot press is a finer, smoother surface, more for details. If you're painting portraits and animals and buildings and things where you want more crisp detail, a hot press, smoother paper is going to be great. For me, this one says a cold pressed fine grain. So it's a bit smoother than what I typically would work on, but if it's Arches, it's going to be fine. If you have extra fine, then that's where things get a little more conducive to detail. So this is a block, and you can see there's black adhesive all around the edges, except for one little spot on one side. Some people get confused, especially the first time they use a block and aren't quite sure what's happening. What this is designed for is to keep your paper nice and flat. Because it's 100% cotton, well, even cellulose paper, as you apply water, the fibers expand. So that causes the paper to buckle and puff up a little bit. If some people stretch their paper, if you tape your paper down to a hard surface, that works as well. The block is beautiful. I love it. It's portable. I don't have a bigger surface to have to maneuver when I'm tilting and lifting and moving. And I tape the edge just to make sure that I've got a bit of a border. If you paint right to the edge and then you want to have your paint matted, you're going to lose some of your design. And very often it's, oh, I love that spot and I love that spot. How do I crop that? It's not possible. So if you give yourself a bit of a border, a little bit of weight around the edge, that really helps to give you that movement. And you can have mats custom cut to fit the design after that. So once you've got your paper covered with your paint and you're happy with your design, let it dry on the block. When it dries on the block, as you can see, it's nice and flat. And this started with a lot of water, so there was a bit of buckling and heaving. So I'm finished with this painting, other than sealing and signing it. So I'm going to take a palette knife, is what I prefer to use, and I just will find the little opening at the top and very, very gently pull it around. If you do this when your paper is wet, you risk the chance of tearing your paper. It's going to be very fragile, and you need to be gentle when it's wet. So best, if you can, to just leave it. Set it aside, come back to it the next day, and then work on taking things off. And as always, just slow and gentle is the best way to go about it. And again, I'm just catching the edge, and I'm pulling it back this way. If I was to pull towards the painting, I run the risk of slicing into my painting, and I certainly don't want to be doing that. I've taped the edge and tipped it, bent it over a tiny bit, so we're needing to lift that. I work with my left hand. It might not be as easy. And I think what I've done here is I have let my tape, there we go, slip over the edge, so that hasn't been as good. So now that that's off, you can see it's nice. It's got, because it's got a bit of a warp to it, but once you get a mat on that, that will flatten it nicely. The tape I'm using, and the tape I prefer to use, but any masking tape will work. You just need to be gentle with it. Some of it's very tacky, and what you can do is take the length of tape, put it on a piece of fabric, pull it back, and that'll take some of the tack off it, and then it won't adhere to your paper as strongly. The thing to think about or remember with masking tape is to don't leave it on for weeks and weeks. The longer you leave it, the more the adhesive on the tape will adhere, especially when you've got very absorbent, lovely paper. That glue is going to soak into the paper, and then you'll have an issue taking it off, and you don't want to rip your paper once you've got your beautiful painting on. So the tape I've been using most recently is the Solo tape, and this is from Michael Solovyev's site, Watercolor Online. If you're going to get into watercolor, I highly recommend you follow along with Michael Solovyev. He's an amazing watercolorist. And he has products available and lots of recommendations for a loose style of painting, which is where I tend to go most of the time. While I'm on that topic, another person that you may want to check out for a loose, lovely style is Steve Mitchell, The Mind of Watercolor on YouTube. He has amazing product reviews and demonstrations on pen and wash, which is a technique we'll talk about further down on another episode as well. And beautiful loose vignettes and very appealing work. So Steve Mitchell, Mind of Watercolor, absolutely check him out. He's an inspiration for sure. And Michael Solovyev, who teaches all over the world. If you ever get a chance to sit in on one of his master classes, I hope you do, because it's important. So when you're taking your tape off, oh, and I should mention too, it comes in different widths. You can see the difference there. There's a 3/4 and a 1 inch. So that's helpful sometimes when you're determining your borders of your painting. When you take off your tape, pull it as flat as you can to the surface of the paper, and pull it away from your painting, and gently. Again, always wait till your paper is dry to do this. Too many paintings have been destroyed because someone has either pulled this way and taken off the paint from the surface of the paper, or ripped the page. So you want to be very gentle and very careful. You can save these. Often I just stick them to the side of my table, and then when I'm taping off for a resist for birch trees or where I don't want paint to go, I will use bits of the tape as well. I like the black because it gives me a real sense of a framed version of the painting when it's done. I've used bright green, bright blue painter's tape. There's beige, ecru colored masking tapes. They're all great. I just find that the black gives my visual sense a grounding. I like that about the black on the paper. I should also mention some of the papers you can get come in various levels of white. Some are bright white, some are off-white. You can get black paper. Some people paint on colored papers as well. So the sky is really the limit, and by all means, test out and explore. So there we have that. And you can see you've got a lovely crisp edge. When you go to put a mat on it, it gives you a nice place to sort of set your mat in place. All right. So the colors I've used for this painting are a new palette, a new set of colors. I'd mentioned Michael Solovyev. He has a recommendation for a set of colors that he uses in particular, and he has a dot card, and dot cards are really, really handy. If you're exploring watercolor and you don't want to put out a lot of money on a lot of colors that can be expensive, Daniel Smith brand is the brand I prefer to use pretty much 100% of the time, and they can be costly. They last a long time, but when you're experimenting or just learning what colors you think you'd like to use, dot cards are great. And several artists have recommendations of color palettes that they prefer to use for their style of painting. So Michael Solovyev has one, Steve Mitchell I believe has one, several painters will have their colors, and then you can try them out. So they're dots of color straight from the tube that they've applied to a card. And if you were to, oh, where's my little brush? There it is. You can pick up the color and try them out. Okay. So they're a really lovely way to go to test out colors, to see what you might want to fill your palette with. Pick a few favorites. Again, you can go online on YouTube to any of the artist channels. You can go to the Daniel Smith website, and there's information on the properties of the color, the pigmentation, the light fastness, and it's good information, and also how to mix colors. So, you know, starting with 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors, and mixing your own is a really nice idea. There's, I think Daniel Smith, for example, the brand that I prefer, I think there's over 175 different colors of paint. There's mineralization, there's granulation, there is iridescence, there's resist paints that will push others away. There's so many properties to the paints, and so many to choose from. If you start with, as I say, 3 or 4 colors, mix your colors for shadows rather than use a black or a dark gray or something from a tube. Mix your colors. Mix your cobalt blue with your burnt sienna and get a gray for undertones, and just have some fun with it. If you get yourself a little palette, for example, something like this, this is filled with all of these colors, and has a beautiful spot here for lots of big mixes, here for some smaller mixes, and just have some fun. Mix, play, leave some on the palette. I call it palette dirt, and it's great for filling in little areas between where you want a shadow or you want a little bit of a different tone. You're keeping in the same color palette, which will make your painting more cohesive. Some people prefer porcelain palettes. I don't mind the plastic ones. They're lightweight. Most of them have a nice lid. They will also have a little removable tray, so if you need more mixing space. I like to keep that for my dot card, and it just pops right back in. Plastic, well, even the porcelain ones sometimes are a bit shiny, and what that means is when you try to mix your paint, it will bead up. So what I do when I get a plastic palette is I'll take a piece of sandpaper, or if you don't have sandpaper on hand, try some something with some grit. So toothpaste, baking soda, and just a kitchen sponge, maybe one that has the abrasive side on it, and just give it a really good scrub. And it gets that gleam off the surface so that your pigment will actually sit and puddle the way it needs to for you to blend your colors and mix them. So that's that. Most of these palettes are available local art supply stores, craft stores, online. Lots to choose from. Explore, take a look, see what might feel right for you. This one I did mention earlier, the Michael Soloviev online, Watercolor Online. It's an Eco Studio palette that he's put out. And it has lots of room. I'm waiting for some 3 colors that I've run out of, so I have to wait until I can buy the new colors to put them in to fill the palette. What this palette does, if you'll notice the difference between the size of the paint wells, if you're using a lovely large brush for a wash, it's difficult to get in. So if you use a smaller brush and make a puddle, then that's great. With this new palette, I can dip in the whole brush and get the paint on quite easily. I can do some mixing on the side here, and I'm quite excited. This is brand new to my studio, so I'm excited to use it when my last 3 colors arrive. They all close up so that they're not going to drip. They're easy to travel with. You want to keep them flat probably, but there's enough air circulation that things will stay fresh. If you get something that is really airtight, or you put them away in a Ziploc bag or something, you run the risk of having your paints get some mold on them. And that's quite a problem in places of high humidity. Here in the Okanagan, we don't have that issue so much, but it can happen. One of the things that I keep in mind, just to make sure I'm avoiding that, is that when I'm using water, I try to make sure that I have distilled water. Is what I always use, just in case. So you don't want anything foreign landing in your water or coming through in your water and contaminating the paint and your painting in the end. It's important to me. Some people don't mind, but it's just part of my process. So I have the distilled water. I keep them in large containers, and I have 2. I designed these containers and sent the design to a potter friend of mine, Lowell Friesen in the North Okanagan, and I just sent him a quick drawing. My thought was, you don't want your paint brushes to dry this way, because what happens is the water goes into the ferrule and loosens the glue, and your brushes will eventually come apart. So when I designed this, I wanted it to be full of divots so that I can just lay my brush that way, and while I'm using it, when I'm dry them, I lay them down and dry them more flat as well. And two pots of water, one for rinsing your brush and cleaning off any pigment that may be on it, and then the other one for clean water. My last palette, and this is the one I typically keep in my studio. Again, a plastic palette, lots of colors, wells available. There are palettes available that are called pans and half pans, and you get your paint in little pans basically, and then they pop in, and those are helpful as well if you want, especially if you want to be changing out colors. It's nice to have that availability. Okay. Some of my paintings are done with brushes. Some are done with credit cards and pieces of plastic. Some are done with palette knives. Some are done with bits of sticks and twigs to make marks. My go-to for most paintings will be this particular brush. It's a medium goat hair and synthetic blend from a fellow just out of Seattle. His name is Tracy Lebenzon, and he creates brushes from things that he's found in estate sales and various places, and repurposes the hair on taxidermy pieces and old fur coats and that kind of thing into a brush, and uses bits of bamboo that he sources through old bits of furniture and that kind of thing. Each brush is painstakingly handmade, and so beautiful to work with. I don't know that you can see the precise tip on this one, but I could paint a whole painting like this with just this one brush. It will give me a wider area for filling in. I can make unique marks, or I can do a fine line, similar to a line you would make with a fine line pen. So this is a must. When this brush arrived at my door a couple of years ago, it was like he had made it for my hand. It is the most beautiful thing I think that I have in my studio. I just don't know what I would ever have done without it. They come in other lengths and sizes as well. And he has sable and fox and squirrel and all kinds of amazing things. So this is the similar brush, a little shorter on the tip, but a longer handle. And again, another one with a bit of a longer bristle. And as you can see, again, the finest tip imaginable. Great for making fine lines, tree branches, that kind of thing. So that's Tracy Lebenzon, Lebenzon, I believe. And you can find him online if you're interested in checking out some of his brushes. And he makes brushes for watercolor and oils and pastels, or not pastels, acrylics, for ceramics. So check him out. They're very, very beautiful. The other brushes that I like to use, this is a hake brush. Very, very popular brush, really. Holds a ton of water. So if you're doing big washes, these brushes are essential, I think. And they come in, this is a 1 inch. You can get them many, many sizes. So if you're painting larger and you want something for bigger washes, there are those as well. So this is another essential for me. The others would be, and I'd mentioned the Michael Solovyev studio. He has brushes that a short handle handy for traveling, and long handle as well. So just different widths. And the difference here is the hake brush has, it can go to a certain level of crispness at the end, but there's still a bit of real estate there on the end. So great for stippling, great for big washes, really lovely. This is a Ron Ranson Pro Art brush. but you can pick them up. They're very inexpensive most of the time in most art and craft stores. These brushes look very similar. Similar ability to hold water. The difference in these is, I'm just going to get a piece of paper here. Is you can get a precise line at the end of that. So it's very, very handy to have something like that if you just need to make a line, a tree trunk, a fence post or something. So these are probably what 95% of my paintings are done with. These 3 brushes. And like I say, I could probably do it all with this one if I didn't have these other lovely little tools at my disposal. Okay. Spray bottles are essential for your art table. I have a couple on hand all the time. This one, simple little spray bottle from a dollar store. I love it because I can adjust the spray on the end of it. Often when I'm painting, I just don't want to put water on my painting. When I'm painting a vignette, for example, and we did a little video on that a while back. When I'm painting a vignette, I like to have just something that just kind of just comes out in little splotches. And you can see on my table how the water is just hitting in certain spots. Then if you were to take your brush with your pigment and just get your brush loaded with lovely paint, juicy paint, and just touch in those wet spots on your paper, and you can see that by tilting your paper and see the gloss, it will expand. Pigment, watercolor pigment, will follow the course of the water. So wherever you have water on your paper, on your canvas, the paint will flow to that border. So that's a handy one to have. Like I said, you can pick these up at the dollar store for next to nothing. Usually they're in the beauty aisle. Handy to have. The other one is also often found in craft stores and art stores as well, but also in beauty stores. If you don't have a craft store locally, if you were to go online and ask for a facial spray mist bottle, and these are absolutely fabulous. They shoot a very fine mist. You can't adjust these. It is what it is. But as you can see, so you could cover a whole large area with a beautiful fine mist. And once you get a feel for that and know how much water you want on your surface, these can be absolutely crucial. When I do paintings on canvas, some of them are very large, 2 feet by 4 feet, and this is just so handy to have to be able to wet the whole thing. So again, available in beauty supply stores, online as a facial mist bottle, I guess, applicator. And they come in different sizes. There's some that are shorter, easier to handle. So nice to have on hand. I also have a little, it's an old makeup remover bottle, but it has this lovely little press top. So if I just want to have just a tiny bit of water to dip my brush in, rather than dip it in my big container, I will just do that, and then I have just enough just to touch on the tip of my brush. Okay. Pens and pencils. I don't typically sketch before I paint. Once in a while I do, and that's where a pencil comes in handy. Just a regular HB pencil. There's charcoal pencils, so many different brands, graphite, gorgeous, different levels of intensity, and then you can use a little stub for blending. That's helpful too. Sometimes a little sketch is really fun to do. These are great for making greeting cards, and once the paint is applied, you can go over it with a fine tip pen. Micron makes a beautiful series of pens in different tip sizes, and you can go around the outside, or you could even just put some paper down, cover it in some lovely swirls of color, and then just go in with your imagination and do some doodles, some Zentangles. Very effective. Makes lovely greeting cards and gift tags, and boy, the sky's the limit. There are different trains of thought on using gouache, which is basically an opaque watercolor, and it can be applied by a brush, the same way as you typically would with a watercolor painting. Sometimes I just like to have a bit of the brightness and almost like a texture, because a gouache will sit on the surface and give you that bit of a sparkle, especially if you use a white or a bright color. So Daniel Smith has a line of gouache as well, but there are many other brands out there that you might want to use. And the spatter is really a fun technique. So I dip the toothbrush in, and then you could also use a paintbrush as well. So usually a firmer brush will give you more direct spatter. Dip it in and direct it. If you wanted a more a splat kind of look, then something larger would work as well. And I just have here's one. So here's an example of a tiny bit of spatter, and how that sort of just brightens up the bottom corner of the painting. Some say that adding that causes your painting to cease to become a pure watercolor, and that's just fine. If you're painting for the joy of it, if you're painting for the love of watching the colors and the images and the designs emerge, and for just the sheer joy of being in the moment with the pigments and the water and the paper and working that relationship is basically really what it is. Learning how you fit into the picture, how the water and the pigments move. Do what you want. Do what you want. Cover it with doodles and gouache. Really, there are no rules, other than maybe don't drink the paint water. Have fun. Enjoy. That's how I learned. I had nobody teaching me. I played around with colors, and I played around with different surfaces, and asked myself a lot of times, what if? What if I did this? How would that work? Let's get some ideas. Go online. See what other people are doing. Use that as a way to inspire what you want to try. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. Find out what makes sense to you. Try it. If it doesn't feel right, if it feels like it's too much work and you don't want to pursue, try something different. I just think that taking the time to explore that relationship between yourself and the paper and the pigment and the brushes and learning how all that comes together, and how that can create something beautiful and essential to what brings you happiness is really important. A lot of people do commissions, and that's great. They paint for other people's vision, and some people prefer not to, and that's just great. Whatever brings you to the table or to the easel, I think is the important thing. Don't be afraid of criticism. Don't let preconceived ideas change how you you want to play and enjoy, whether it's painting or cooking or dancing or making music. There are just so many ways to express creativity. This happens to be mine. It brings me much joy. And it also brings me joy to share it with you. So I'm really pleased that I can do this, and that anybody who has an interest and some time can sit with me in my studio and explore as we go along. Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more, please subscribe to my channel. If you click on notifications, you'll be reminded when new videos come out, and I'll look forward to seeing you here soon.